Hello, so it's the following day and we're carrying on with fitting this swivel base. So what I've done so far is I've centered the swivel inside this part which got cut off the top, and I've drilled an additional hole in this plate here just shy of where this handle's currently, because it's in this position, is sitting a little bit this way, and then when it locks in it fires straight. I've drilled a hole so that this won't foul on this, and then I've drilled straight through, used the existing hole here, and then I've put a locking nut on the back. What I'll do once everything's finished, those bolts will get reversed, so the nice headed, sort of dome headed bolt will actually be on the side that you see, and the nut will be in here. And I've checked to make sure that a pair of nuts between these plates won't catch each other. There's a little bit of clearance for when it spins. So I'm happy with that for now. That's not finished, that side. Obviously that would not be strong enough, just a pair of bolts like that, because the distance between where the seat's going to pull on this bracket here and there, well, an almighty twisting action could happen in the event of a crash. So this needs to be made a lot stronger yet, but it's positioned. Next thing I'm going to do is I've now got this big gap underneath here, so this needs to be packed out. So I've measured it up with a tape measure, and then I found a piece of nice thick wall box section steel which was over in my storage area of steely bits. Probably had this about 15 years sat in the garage. I'm going to cut this to length, and it's going to sit underneath inside there, and it's going to overlap this bracket that the seat pulls on. It's going to get bolted. The bolt will go through that, through the bracket, through the top of this base. It'll overlap that, and I can sort of like weld these pieces together and then put some bolts through and things, and go from there. Then I have cut out these little bits and pieces that were raised up around this edge, which is going to enable that to sit flat against that surface. It's not doing quite at the minute because of those parts. What I'm going to do is notch this out now to match that depth, and then it'll sit over that, against that, and then I'm going to be able to do some welding in here, weld along here, put a pair of bolts through where the swivel base will go on, something like that. Notch is cut, so there's like an offset notch to match the different depths of what's going on inside there. So it's both sides done. That then fits inside there. Press it up against these cutouts because I cut these square, so I know that goes square. And then that fits over that bracket, and it fits over that little lip there. So that is now flat against that surface. Then that sits on top and it is level. Ta-da! Plate goes in. Then I put these bolts back in again to get this square in the right place before I drilled through the whole thing. So now it's ready for a pair of bolts there, so it's bolted in, and then it's positioned. It's flat and level, and it's held it in place. And now I can look at what I need to do to get this solid to that, and that more solid to that, because at the minute it's just bolted there, which is too far away from there over a thin piece of steel. So let's get that solid. So that down there was like a 32mm box section. I've had a look through my stuff and I found some 20mm box section, and it's going to work brilliantly. So what I'm going to do is now cut a length of this to go under here, so it'll get welded to this, so this can get welded around here, and then it gives a nice solid surface then for that hole there, the plate, to get bolted through that. So it's just I'm just making up a framework to go around. So I'll do a length here, I'll do a length there, get it all welded in. Then I'm thinking what I'll probably do is, before I had a couple of washers stacking this plate off that surface, instead of washers, I could weld in a length of plate, the same thickness of what those washers were, if I've got something, maybe about 4mm, 5mm, and then it can get welded to this, welded to that bar, tack welded to this part here, and then that bolt has got a really solid fixing through there, it's solid there, it's solid there, that's welded to that. I could get some more welds in around here. I think it's going to be solid. You're always trying to think 20 steps ahead when you're doing something like this. So I've got a bit of angle iron, and what I'm thinking of doing is I'll cut down it lengthways, leaving just a little bit of a lip on for added strength, and then put the piece underneath there, which is my bar going across, that this will be bolted through, which will set the height for this plate off that. The thickness of that will be what the washers were, and then it gives me something to butt this up against to get that, so that this then sits flat and level.
Considerations to how much to cut off. I'm keeping this lip, so I know that I need to have enough room for the head of a bolt, so I'm going to cut it so it's just like the same height as the head of a bolt, so we can keep as much material as it can, but it won't cause an issue with it turning.
Well, there's been more swearing than progress for the last hour and a half, so I had to go and have a brew before I lost my...
That is finally, after threads bolted to that, and now I'm going to drill this, bolt this down to there, and then I will get a weld on that, and then see how this lines up then. And what I'm trying to do is work my way this way, and it's been a right faff. I will not lie, this is driving me insane, trying to get these bars together so that they're underneath this plate and not like splicing out this way because of this thing. It's driving me insane, but by raising the height of this plate here a little bit, because it's an angle, you raise it this way, they can come in more, so that's what I've ended up coming up with. So I'm ended up with doubling up on this. So I've got this one is a packer, and it'll go on there like that. It's driving me mad.
Run out of bolts, so I've only got these big coach bolts, so what I'm going to do is get this like pinned together using these, then I'm going to weld it and carry on, and then tomorrow I shall pick up some nice bolts with some like nice dome headed type things or something. These are dome head, but don't want to be using coach bolts like that, ugly. Cut those off. Oh, just clamped it together and just drilled through everything. It'd have been straight first time. I'm pissing about.
Open up to 9. Still quite messing about trying to make them 8 now. Or just packet pieces. 9 will drill it. 10 will drill it. 10 will drill it. That's the blunt.
Why being such a fluff? I get this bolted in place first, and I can weld it in. Just make it up as you go. Make it up as you go. Like you always do.
The longest bolts in the world.
The equivalent of rugger dogs when you're doing a bolt up. That's how many grunts you do. How many grunts? How tight do you want it? 2 grunts? 3 grunts? Just 1 grunt. Equivalent of 1 rugger. 1.5 rugger dogs.
Okay, that's cool. So, it's well done. Get the gap there, converge that. Okay, think about this. Well, I'm not welding it in a way. That's it. There. That'll go like that. The weld is out the way. And then
I'll weld that bit when I get that off after. If I was right in the weld into that. There you go. So, a couple little stitch welds across there, and then welded in and around here. I will do the back of this later. Some welds in those corners. So, I think I can take this off now, go from there. It's getting to the point where I'm nearly ready for finally fitting this frame inside this and welding it in permanently. So there's a couple things that I need to do in prep for that. So I'm going to weld these nuts on to make them captive. So there we have it. That is my finished bit of framework that's got loose washers on it. But that is what's now just currently bolted to my plate. So taking into consideration notching, difference in height where it has to step down, the difference between height where this, where it fits around the profile, the fact that it's narrow enough here so when my bolts come through like that from the seat later on, they don't hit this and they clear it. That has taken a number of hours, but that now sits in there. It is solid and it's perfectly formed to the inside of that. So the next step now, clean it all down, strip it, get it welded in. This bit's wheelie good. Don't forget to change the direction that you're using it every now and then, as the wires get sort of like turned in one direction, makes them less effective. Simply changing the direction you use it on the drill makes it work like new again. So it's ready for a spray, and that is what it's looking like. Reasonable welds, quite like those. Nuts are on. They're quite interested in playing a part. You could say they're captivated. Weld through primer. I'm going to use this on the corners in the areas where I'm going to be welding, and I'll just use some primer, standard stuff, just to give it a coat protection before it goes inside that frame. Gonna go in for brew, come back, I'll flip it over, stick it into the top of this, that has already been wire wheeled, so that'll get good conductivity in there for my welds. And then I will probably do some spraying on the frame once it's in there. The frame has been bolted back inside there, so that I know that the frame is absolutely perfectly seated inside that part. And now I'm going to weld in these 4 corners. The weld's got a little bit messy towards the end because, frustratingly, my gas ran out and I was halfway through a weld before I realised how sparkly it was. But it's okay. That's in. I'm going to take these bolts out, put my swivel base back on. I was about to start spraying it up and stuff, but I have to consider the fact that it might not turn yet, and I might actually have to cut some of the length of this off to give clearance for that base to swivel, with the nuts and things that are going to be bolting it down to that bit, which is yet to even start on. This has been the really complicated bit, obviously, and that I'm hoping should be dead straightforward, because I've already got the whole reason for using this was that box goes straight into the van, and it's the top that I've just got to sort out for that, the bottom of that to bolt down. And I'm hoping that it should be a straightforward plate the top of it up, put that on top, bolt it through 4 fixings, job done. But I'll probably need to either cut a bit of this off or cut a bit of this off, because at the minute I haven't dropped the height of it. I always want to drop a bit of height off, and so far I've not done that. If I actually end up just putting this on top of there, it's going to raise the height of the seat up by whatever the gap is that I create, so that these 2 parts can spin without catching each other. So I will need to cut this or that still.
The swivel is in the top section. I am excited. Check it out. It's in. I've got some temporary bolts just to hold in the framework into my box section. Not bothered with the other ones yet. It's got to be coming in and out a little bit. Right, next bit. Micro adjustment. So those are the positions where it'll lock itself in when you swivel it. So you pull the handle, which disengages a bar from here, and it will lock here, here, or one of these. So consider that. Taking that into consideration, I'm going to have it so it's over here. So when it's facing back into the living room, my micro adjustment is in those there. So I have options of where it will lock into position when it's facing back into the living room.
Check this out. I just stand on it, pull the catch, and then it locks. It locks here, and it'll lock into the little micro adjustment areas when you're in the living room. The living room.
Full 180, and it only takes 2 grunts to get it back onto the base.